Good evening. Hi, Lolly.
Hi, Nick. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. And
Nice to
yourself?
be back after last week. I got to
I
say
missed
thank
you
you.
missed you
Yes,
last week.
I've got to say thank you to the team for stepping in. For Marlena,
Yes. Marlena, she done a fantastic job in your
she did, didn't she?
absence. Yeah, yeah. So,
But we are
Lolly,
back.
this is our 10th episode, and I
Yes,
believe it's the last one in the series. Is that
it
correct?
is. It is. We will
Yeah.
be back in July. And on that note, Nick, let me
July
see
or
something here.
January?
So I've got you a bit of a parting gift for January. Look, I hope
Oh,
I hope it's the
that's
right size. Look, this is on
yeah.
my green screen,
Are
but
you?
yeah, I hope it's the right size. So I'll get
As
that
long as
over
it's
to
not
you.
XXL, I think I'll be all right, Lolly.
I don't know if I went that big, but we'll work on it.
All right, thank you. No, that's good. That's looking very nice as well in your "So What Is" t-shirt. Can't wait to get
Thanks.
my
I
own.
like it.
It's nice. It's a nice
Yeah,
touch.
it's fitting. It's fitting,
I
isn't
always
it?
I always say that you pay attention to detail. That's one of
I
your
try.
redeeming qualities.
I do try, Mister Shirt. I like in the shirt today.
Oh yes, yes,
It's a
yes.
very smart
Thank
swasp.
thank thank you very much. So Lolly, so today our 10th and final episode of the series. For all
Yes.
those of you who haven't been with us from the beginning, you know that we've been doing a "So What Is" series. We've covered all sorts on this podcast. It's to do with all things hair and beauty, makeup, you name it, anything to do with hair and beauty. That's what we've been speaking about over the
Hmm.
last few months, and we've had a host of lovely guests on our podcast. We've had some hair scientists, we've had makeup artists, we've had black business owners, we've had a whole lot right here, and
Yes, we
tonight
have.
is no exception, Lolly. What we got in
Before
store
before
tonight?
before we even get into that, Nick, though,
Yes.
like after you just said that we've seen a lot of different, and we've had some fantastic guests, as you say.
Hmm.
Has anything that have you taken away from this? Like, have you learned something new?
I've learnt so much, to be quite honest. As I said, I think I mentioned it in one of the shows that I've never really been one for exfoliating,
Hmm.
and since we've learnt about how important it is to cleanse the skin and to just remove the certain toxins from your skin, I've been doing that, and it's really, I don't do it all the time, but I do it every once in a while now, and I find it really beneficial. Makes me feel like a brand new baby.
Do you know what I for me what I like is I like the information,
Yeah.
and the information that we've been given is really really good and useful.
Hmm.
I think as well. Sometimes with when it comes to our topics, we can get a bit boring,
Hmm.
and it can just be very much sort of like throwing things that you must do. You da, 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 da. But I find the guests and people that we've had have been very informative, and it's like take the information if you want, do your own
Yeah.
research, or
Yeah.
they're putting you into the right direction, which I think is good because sometimes when things are just shoved down your throat all the time, it can
Absolutely.
seem a bit like you just switch off. But
Y-
yeah, I like the way that
100%.
our guests
And
have.
when you say about interesting guests, did you see? Did you have you? I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the last one that you missed with Gemini,
I missed that one. I did
stylist.
actually
Oh
miss that
my
one.
gosh,
I
what a
will go back and watch
character!
that one.
What a character! Very very interesting guy indeed.
Yeah.
Got his own style. Very outlandish in the way that he dresses and the way that he
Hmm.
style, but he owns that.
Hmm.
Really, really interesting character. So he's just one of many that has brought
Yeah.
a real zest and a real
Hmm.
difference to our podcast, and open eyes. That's been really good.
Yeah, and I definitely love that. And anybody who is watching, who think that they would like to share their their business, or share different information, or what they're doing in regards to like anything black
Hmm.
hair, skincare, that kind of thing, natural products, please do get in contact with us. I'm sure that the producers will put the details along the screen so you can get in touch with us. And there we go. So on social media platforms, Instagram at So What Is Show, and Facebook So What Is. So make sure you do get in touch and let us know what's going on out there, because we'd be happy in next series to have you guys on board.
Indeed.
But without further ado,
And
tonight
subscribe,
we
subscribe, subscribe,
that's
subscribe.
another one as well. Subscribe, and do make sure you watch back. I said that after I had said I didn't get to watch last week, but I will.
Yeah.
um, what you can actually share it amongst your friends, and yeah, let's get this going where it should.
Absolutely.
Tonight we have two guests. So we have Leanne Alie. I hope I did say that right. Leanne Alie, who has a podcast, and she talks about the evolution of the black hair industry. We also have the marketing and sales manager, or the former marketing and sales manager of Dyke and Dryden,
Yeah.
Mr. Rudi Page, joining us this evening
Yeah.
as well.
I wonder if he'll be able to tell me how I could make a million, Lolly. He was part of the team that they became millionaires, like and Dryden, through black hair products and whatever, being one of the first UK based black hair products manufacturers and resellers to make a million. So I wonder if you can give me some tips on that. I hope so.
Let's hope so. So should we bring on our first guest?
Indeed, indeed.
Leanne, are you there?
I'm here. Hi.
Hi,
Hello,
Leanne.
Leanne.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks
for coming on
for joining
board.
us. It's very, very, very welcome indeed. So, Leanne, so you are the host and the co-founder of the Coiled hair podcast, right?
Yes.
And from what I understand, obviously, just from doing a little bit of research and that, it's a documentary style podcast, 8 parts, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That deals with everything from the history of Afro hair and bits and pieces, why buy black businesses and things like that. It's very interesting. I've seen the first 2. I ran out of time, so I couldn't watch the rest of them, but that gave me enough information about what you do. But I'm not going to spoil it for you. I want you to tell us about the podcast, how it came about, a little bit about yourself as well, how you got into it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I'm a podcast producer and creator, and I really love making podcast content for black audiences. So I'd previously worked on Dope Black Dads podcast and Dope Black Women, and for a long time I was making podcast content for other people, and I realized I had my own story to tell, and I knew it was going to be about hair, but I didn't know exactly what shape it would take. And if I take us back to the first lockdown last year, when we came out of that in August, the very first thing I did is that I went to the hair salon and I got my hair relaxed, and I did it without even thinking. And it wasn't until a couple months later when I watched Emma Dabiri's documentary on Channel 4 called Hair Power that I really started to think, wait, actually, why have I been relaxing my hair for so long? Like, A, it's not good for my hair, and B, why am I trying to keep up with this look that just isn't really me? And so with that, it just opened like a whole load of other like themes and topics that I wanted to research, and within that I started looking at the history of black hair. I was looking at the truth about relaxers, so what actually is in the chemicals that we use in relaxers and what impact does it have on our hair. And through finding out all these information, I decided that I wanted to transition back to my natural hair, which, as you can see, I've done, which kind of spoils some of the podcast, but you know.
No, it doesn't.
So the podcast follows my transitioning journey, and through that, I'm looking at all sorts of different aspects of black hair, the black hair industry, and it's also just a lens that we can use to discuss other things such as identity, Black British culture, and race in the UK.
Leanne, I'm going to ask you a question because you brought up quite a few different topics there. When we talk about hair, one thing I notice is the culture thing brings up quite a lot, and identity. Do you find your transition personally was anything to do with you discovering like your true identity or anything like that?
Yeah, it's somewhat along those lines. And like what I've realized doing this podcast is that black hair isn't political for everyone. I wouldn't necessarily say it's political for me, but what I found was that the actual reason that I was relaxing my hair for so long was a way that subconsciously white supremacy was showing up in my day-to-day life, because I was straightening my hair because I was obsessed with a straight look, a European look, a Eurocentric look. And where did that idea come from? These Eurocentric standards of beauty, those attitudes come from the impact of colonialism. And I talk about this in episode 1. We spoke to Dr. Katie Powell. She's a professor of Black Studies. She said, and one thing that really stuck with me, is that back in colonial times, it was actually Afro hair that was a bigger marker of blackness rather than skin tone. So the texture of the hair was more of a marker of blackness. And it's since then that black hair has been so heavily policed and politicized. And I realized that I'd fallen into this trap essentially and just wanted to take the power back for myself and completely step out of it.
That is so inspirational. You know, one of the things that I took from the podcast, one of the podcasts that I was looking at, is when you talked about, you just mentioned relaxers, and you said about well, I didn't know this, but you said there's a 30% more increased risk of women contracting breast cancer through these kind of chemical-based relaxers.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because when I first started researching the topic, which was, I guess, this time last year, there was a lot of research in the area, none of which came from the UK, by the way. It was all US and Africa that these studies were coming from, these academic studies. And there was a lot of research to say that there were links with consistent use of hair relaxers and health issues in Black women, such as fibroids, but there wasn't enough evidence to say that it was conclusive. However, there's a new study that came out in May this year, which was from the Oxford University's Journal of Carcinogenics. And that now has conclusive evidence that says consistent use of lye-based hair relaxers in Black women, and lye refers to the hydroxide, so in this case, sodium hydroxide. If you use lye-based relaxers 7 or more times in a year, over a period of 15 years, the sample of women that they studied had a 30% increased risk of breast cancer. And if you think of the home-based hair relax kits that you get, if you read the instructions, it said you should use it like every 6 to 8 weeks. And if you're following that pattern consistently, you're going to end up relaxing your hair at least like 7-8 times a year. And those stats in itself are scary. It's scary that we're only learning about this in 2021. It's like crazy.
So why do you think there is so much money in the black hair industry?
Oh, well.
Because you Black women love your hair, Lolly. You love to do your hair.
What is it down to? If we're having a movement where there's a lot of change, I mean, like you said before, like it's not always political for everybody. What do you think is the factor? Do you think it's something deep rooted in us where our hair is our crown? Where, you know, that's why we spend so much money on it, regardless of however we choose to wear it. Why do you think we spend so much money on our hair?
I think it's a few things. I think firstly, there's so many things you could do with Afro hair, which is why Afro hair is so great. We have so many options. There's so many things you can do with it. I think that's one of the reasons why we spend so much money. But I think really, and what I've learned speaking to a couple of trichologists, is that Afro hair is actually really easy to maintain. It's just the hair and beauty brands, especially the mainstream ones, that have led us to believe that is really complicated and that you need several products. So with that in mind, Black women's value can be intrinsically linked to their hair. And so when you have all these marketing and sales messages around, you can have your hair like this, you can have your hair like this, it just makes us want to buy loads of products. And because there's no one size fits all to Afro hair, you really have to learn what your hair likes and what it doesn't like. The average woman, Black woman, just ends up trying those different products until they find the right one. And then you just become a little bit of a product junkie. And there's been a lack of education around the actual fundamentals that you need to maintain healthy Afro hair. And really, from what I've learned, the fundamentals are hydration and moisturization, and you only really need a few core products. But I think it's like marketing and brands that have really led us to believe we need things when we don't really.
Do you think part of the culture of like going to the hairdressers, see, like men, they have the barber situation every fortnight or what have you. When women go every 2-3 weeks or maybe every month to go and have a steam treatment or something like that, or they go and have their hair relaxed, braided, whatever it is they choose to do. It's like a whole family almost. You get
Mm,
used to all the different stylists. You get used to the one person's hand in your hair.
mm.
You're on a journey with them. Do you think that plays a part in it? Is more of the um what's the word I'm looking for? More of a routine and feeling familiar.
I really think that pattern is a lot more prominent within Black men rather than women. And there's an episode that we're doing on Black men that's coming up. And that whole concept of the barbershop is so rooted in community. And I mean, I'd be interested to hear what you think, Nick, and being a safe space for Black men, that routine is really embedded there. Whereas I think for women, I mean, it really depends on what type of hair salon that you're going to, because I think that for a lot of Black women, the experience going to the hair salon is sometimes a pleasant one, but sometimes it's not. And I'm sure you can relate to this when you go in and you have to wait for ages and they're trying to do like 2 people's hairs at once. But if you find the right salon, it can be a really pleasant experience. But I do feel like that idea of community and routine is a lot more rooted within the within Black men rather than Black women, especially when you have things like YouTube and like so many people are doing tutorials now and you can kind of learn how to do things yourself. I think especially over the last 18 months, so much more Black women have been a lot more experimental and trying to do it themselves and trying to learn a lot more about their hair when the salons were closed.
It's very interesting that you say that about, because I could speak from obviously being a Black man and my history of growing up. We started with my dad's friend. He was a barber, and we used to all go around to his house. He used to bring us to his house, and I think even in one of the podcasts you talk about the colonialism and the impact that it's had on society's attitude towards our hair. And when it's we are celebrating Black History Month as at the moment, and it's ironic that when we're in a month that we're celebrating Black history and we're talking about colonialism and Black hair, how we are really now empowering ourselves through our barbershops, through our own stylists, through our own products, all these kind of things that are feeding into the narrative of regaining the power within our societies, whereas our products and the way that we actually view ourselves, our natural hair, embracing all the things that make us who we are. And there's one thing that, as I said, from the barbershop, it's always been a safe place for you to go to meet people, to share ideas, to hear what's going on within your community. When the Windrush generation came here, it was one of the places that they congregated to get together to kind of like meet up and find out about what's going on and share ideas and through their build their businesses. Sorry, there was a little bit of I didn't ask a question, but there was a question in there. Sorry, so sorry about that. Let me clarify. So in the way you was talking about colonialism and the impact on society's attitude towards that was covered in one of your podcasts. And how do you think colonialism has impacted, especially Black women and their hair and how they look at sourcing their hair styles and things like that?
It's a very big question, but essentially, before colonialism, Black hair was considered a social art, especially in African tribes and different African communities. And the hairstyles that they did had so much value. It could represent your social status. It could represent the tribe that you were from. So there was so much value placed on Black hair. And when slavery happened, when colonialism happened, it was such a constant reminder of how different we are and a different way of living and our different values, which is why, well, one of the reasons why Black hair has been policed in that way. So black hair was covered. If you reflect on the Ting Yong laws, which were laws that mandated that black women had to cover their hair.
Yeah.
And then even if you look past slavery in those post-colonial times, there were things like the pencil test and the comb test, which the comb test in particular, it measured how well or how easily a comb could pass through your hair. And if you had thicker, more coarse afro hair, you were considered to be more black. So it's those markers of blackness in relation to afro hair that we still see today, because really and truly texturism is still a thing. We talk about colorism a lot, but we don't talk about texturism. And texturism is the preference for a more Eurocentric look, and I think within the black community that can be considered like a more looser curl pattern.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've personally seen that quite a lot online. If you look at the natural hair community, and if you look at a lot of the trending videos online, you'll see a lot more representation of looser curl textures rather than those who have a bit more kinky curl patterns. So some of these attitudes are still very much present today. And I mean, even if you look at what's on TV, it's changed a lot in the last 15 years, but especially when I was growing up, all I would see is straight hair, which is one of the reasons why I wanted relaxed hair so much. And again, it's because there was a preference for this Eurocentric look, because these colonial attitudes have been instilled for so long.
Do you think, I mean, we've got the younger generation now. Do you think that they are kind of buying into the natural movement, or do you think that they just kind of going along with whatever is kind of out there right now, whatever is current, whatever the new themes are? The reason why I ask this question is because even if, in terms of like music, for instance, I remember growing up and, you know, we'd be at school and people who are from an African background wouldn't even want to say that they were from an African background. You know, their hair was tight curls, you know, that was that kind of thing. Or they used to have the styles with the thread wrapped round, and they wouldn't want to identify with their culture. Now you look at the music side of things and the charts, you're seeing a lot of these young, from African descent, young artists, and they're at number one, and that's in the UK charts. But they're still having the same kind of look. Well, it's pretty much what I've got. Like, do you know what I mean? You've got them, you know, showing that they're, you know, they're from Ghana or Nigeria or whatever it is, and they're speaking in their native tongue. They're holding on to their cultural differently, their identity. They're not looking as deep as hair. Do you think it's a cultural thing where it's from a certain age group that are more focused on that than it is the new generation?
I think it's twofold. So I think in terms of the representation that we have now with a lot of artists, we want to talk about female artists that wear wigs and weaves. I have to say, there's nothing wrong with wearing wigs and weaves. In fact, like, I empower women to wear wigs and weaves, A, because it's a protective style, and B, I actually don't see it as conforming to a Eurocentric look, and it shouldn't be seen like that, because black women were wearing wigs and wearing weaves like centuries ago, way back in Egyptian times. So that should never be seen as a way to conform to a Eurocentric look, in my opinion. I think the other side of it is that a lot has changed since I was growing up, and there's quite a few people that are doing really amazing work to improve the representation of Afro hair for younger kids. And we've spoken to a couple of people that you'll hear on the podcast later in the series, but you now have World Afro Day, which Michelle de Leon created, which she runs the Big Hair Assembly, and that's not just for black kids, it's for all kids. And it's a real education around Afro hair, the importance of it, the history of it. And if you're educating these kids from young, all kids, they will understand how amazing black hair is, and that really empowers their black peers to wear their hair in their natural form. There's also Coco Girl magazine, which I absolutely love. So I remember I used to buy magazines all the time when I was at school. I used to get like your Girl Talks and your Ms. Never once did I see a black child on the cover of that magazine. Whereas Coco Girl magazine, and there's Coco Boy magazine as well, it's a black magazine for black kids, and they've just released a book about hair as well. And it's that further representation that younger kids are getting that I didn't have when I was growing up that I think is making the world of difference.
Excellent.
Great stuff.
I see as well. Before we just wrap up, I see that you produce a few podcasts like Dope Black Men and Dope Black Women. That's quite interesting. I wanted to talk to you a little bit later, if we got a bit more time, about the podcast that you've produced as well. So hopefully you will stick around and we'll be able to explore some of the podcasts that you've been and what you get from producing these podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Leanne. It's been really enlightening speaking to you, and I'm happy that you are embracing your natural as well. As we say, we are all things. We're not just one thing. We're everything,
Yes.
aren't we?
Exactly.
That's what we are. So
just enjoy the green room with the
yes.
refreshments.
And stay away from the wine, Leanne. Don't want you coming back on like all swaying from side to side.
Oh,
Okay?
you should have said that.
We'll catch up with you shortly, Leanne.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Leanne.
guys.
Thank you. That was very enlightening.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
confident young lady. And you know, as I said, the podcast, when you see some of the podcasts, she's got some very interesting guests as well on there that I found. Yeah, it's good, really good.
Yeah, she's done very well. Very well.
Yes, indeed. So on to our next guest, Lolly.
Yes.
Now, like we were talking about before, Dyke and Dryden was one of the forerunners of black hair beauty, and you know, not only in the stylist, but being at the forefront of marketing and things like that. So I'm very interested to speak to this young man. He was one of the I think, if I'm not wrong in saying, he'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was one of the first of the bunch, along with Derek, who we've had on our podcast before, and along with obviously the owners and that. I think he was one of the first to Derek Clement, and I think he was one of the first to actually, you know, be there in terms of getting the business off the ground and that. So I'm very interested to hear his take on how it started and things like that.
Definitely. Should we bring him on?
Let's bring him on.
We've had the name brought up so many times on this show. It's only right.
Indeed.
Good evening. Welcome, Rudi.
Good evening, both. How are you doing?
I feel compelled to call you Mr. Page because of
Excellent. I like that respect from
Yes,
the young
indeed.
people. All right, I'm your elder. I'm a junior elder now.
Well, you don't look much older than me, Rudi. I don't know about that.
Wait till I start giving some dates, then you'll realise.
Really? Well, as they say, black don't crack, so I wouldn't be surprised. But thank you for joining us on this podcast. We had one of your colleagues, Derek Clement, on one of our first episodes, and he gave us a real insight into Dyke and Dryden and where it all began and how he began as an apprentice and things like that and whatever. And correctly, as I was just saying to Lolly before you came on, I'm sure you were one of the first people that was part of the management team that actually, when it first kicked off, it first got off the ground, right?
Yeah, I can give you a quick overview.
Yes, please do.
First of all, I'd like to commend Leanne Alie on her work, and I'm actually in the third podcast, and what I'm really particularly pleased at is the work, and you've alluded to it, is very well researched and brilliantly produced. And she really got to some of the areas that our community have to think about, and from a values, supply chain, attitudes. So it's really good. It's definitely something that people should listen to. Number 3 is really important because it speaks to the economic involvement of our community in the industry, which no doubt we'll touch on now.
Yes, indeed.
Right. So very, very quickly then. So Dyke and Dryden began in 1965. Mr. Dyke, Mr. Dryden, both from a Jamaican background, up in Tottenham. Mr. Wade joined them in 1968 8. He was from Montserrat. He had 2 Jamaicans, the Monstratians. But they had a very loyal staff, and they had shops in Haringey and in Hackney. They were very social minded in terms of being entrepreneurs, but social in terms of the community. So Mr. Dryden was the chair of the Hackney Race Relations organization up there. Mr. Dyke was former chair of the West Indian Standing Conference. Also, he was chair of the Association of Jamaicans. And so there was a lot of community development that they were involved in. So a good example in the 1980s that I'm talking about now, that I joined in 1981, Mr. Dryden used to spend a lot of time going into police stations to get black youngsters out of the station. Because in those days we had the sus laws, where you could be just walking, going to get your lunch during dressed up smartly, and you could be picked up off the street on the basis that you could be going somewhere to commit a crime, taken to the police station. So they were very, important in terms of their attitude to the community and its social development, as well as its economic development.
Yeah.
So, so the industry, in terms of the size, and Dyke and Dryden's leadership, really stemmed from the 1980s, because that was the growth of the curly perm and the relaxers, and the larger Black American companies. And Dyke and Dryden, we were the key distributors. And also Dyke and Dryden had its own brands called Natural Beauty and Super Curl. So so that picture is of us landing in Atlanta in July 1982. So Dyke and Dryden also had a travel agent and put together a group of people from the industry, hairdressers, salon owners, wholesalers, and we all went to Atlanta. And the reason, and the Bronner Brothers show at the time, that was the largest black hair show in the world. And what the aim was, I was promoted to sales and marketing manager, and Mr. Dyke said that what we want an exhibition like Bronner Brothers here in the UK. So I looked at the way the Americans used music, style, fashion, the kind of technology for the time, and just that whole American way of doing things. So when we came back here, then I coordinated the original Afro Hair and Beauty. So I coined those 3 words, Afro Hair and Beauty. So the original exhibition was at Grosvenor House Hotel in 17th to 18th of March 1983. And there's very few people from our community in terms of African and Caribbean backgrounds who have not been to Afro Hair and Beauty at some point
I
in their
have.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and obviously it was sold out years later, but for many years it was the cornerstone of the industry. And at the time it was about us keeping ahead market share wise with the big brands, but also it was about developing the community economic development. So we were the largest provider of trade credit to Caribbean businesses throughout the country. Also, Dyke and Dryden had shops as well, and to give you a sense of the challenges that we had to face, in 1982, Dyke and Dryden opened a shop in Wood Green Shopping City. It's the first black business in that centre. But they had to near enough take them to court, because in the beginning they wouldn't allow them to actually open. And then when Dyke and Dryden reached £1 million turnover, they couldn't get an overdraft for £5,000. So that gives you a sense of what the economic environment was for our community in terms of self-reliance, wanting to build up our own businesses. And Dyke and Dryden was also really important because they invested not just in that way, but also in the salons, in the hairdressing schools, and at one time employed 50 people, and then the supply chain was a lot more. So many young people were able to develop themselves, get a foot on the ladder, get to work. What does it mean to get to work on time, build up the interpersonal skills, and just understand the world of work.
Yeah.
At a time when it was not easy for black youngsters. And people like myself, and the things that we've gone on to do years later, is because we had that start. Because when I was put in charge of putting together Afro Hair and Beauty, I was only 21 coming on 22
Really?
years old. So that's why I spend my lot of time focusing on that age group, because I think you're fearless, you're determined, and you want to get things done in your early 20s. There's no time. You're not going to wait around. So Dyke and Dryden encourage that.
So Rudi, in terms of the business, I know that a lot of back then you used to import a lot of stuff from the States, right? So a lot of the products that you were using was imported from the States. You used to go to places like Chicago and stuff to source your goods. How was it received in terms of when you brought it back here and introducing new products to the UK market? How was it received?
It was great, because if back in the 1980s, you're talking about anything American, African American. Now we're talking about whether it be the music, the fashion, and then the hair products. As I alluded at the beginning, all of those things went together. So that influence. And of course, you had a new generation coming through, my generation, who, were attracted to that style, Lovers Rock. So you had Lovers Rock, the UK Lovers Rock, which was being produced in the country. So that age group, just like every generation, worked out what they wanted, what style they wanted. And, so the whole international industry of hair was just a beacon of light for many of us. And people like myself, we would have never traveled internationally. I mean, I never even had a passport until I was told that I'd be going to Atlanta. I had to go and get a passport. So it just gave great opportunity. And as I said, it also had massive economic transformation, because the entrepreneurs from our community, female and male, were able to set up their businesses, invest. The entrepreneurs were investing, and so it was really a flying time. It really was.
So Rudi, if we're coming up to today's day, we have things like the internet, we have social media, we can keep up to the times. We can get information, we can research. How did you guys research your products before you brought them over? How did you know about them? How did you get information?
Good question, Lolly. And one of the reasons I believe is, again, it's a moment in time, because we all liked African American culture anyway. So when we saw the hairstyles, the afros, and then the curly perm, the look, so that we had Ebony magazine in those days still. It was just attractive. We were locked into American culture, and they looked very flashy. When the representatives came over here, they looked good, smart. He taught us how to dress, basically. It's a whole different culture in terms of for many of us. So it was just a style and fashion of the time, and those companies. And I visited all of the manufacturers, all the major ones. I mean, I was fortunate. I met all of the top entrepreneurs who ran the major companies at the time. Johnson Products, Proline, M&M Products, Soft Sheen, all of them. I sat down with them as a young man, and was able to get some sense of why they were doing and the way they did things, why they were doing it, and the way they did things, which is really important in terms of the community economic development. So it was a style and fashion at the time. And that was the pull, really.
Okay. So where are you now today? What are
So
you up to?
today, within this industry, funny enough, by profession, I'm a management consultant. I specialize in policy implementation in different areas. But
It's still
I
in the hair
also,
industry
yeah,
or separately?
yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
myself and you mentioned my business partner, Derek Clement. We have a
Mhm.
brand called Derek Clement Hair Care System. And then we have a men's range, K77 men's range. And the COVID, in a sense, helped give us the brand a boost, because what it meant was that the online, because we put things online pre-COVID, and that's been one of the advantages for the community, to have a better representation, because over the last few years, the ability to actually have high street premises and then build business from there has been very difficult. And then also there's been a big restriction in terms of supply as well. So that's why you won't see very many of our community with businesses on the high street and being able to get the brands. So over the last couple of years now, more brands from the community have been developed, and they've been able to put them online. I guess now, as we open up, what will need to happen is that we need to put together more pop-up shop types of enterprises, and I've noticed one or two entrepreneurs being able to get into Westfields and things like that, and take more brands with them from the community. So the key thing is about collaboration. Our community has to collaborate and understand that markets work through collaboration,
Mhm.
supply chain collaboration. You'll always have one or two people who will do well on their own, but it is about collaboration. If you want to get the jobs, want to get the influence, if you want to get that wider creative and cultural industries impact, it's never changed the last 40 years.
Rudy, in the book that Tony Wade wrote, how they made a million.
Yeah.
Okay, he talks about the industry, the black hair industry, being worth in excess of, I think, 88 million.
88 billion, yeah.
In the UK, that is. This is UK, not worldwide, but worldwide we may be talking about more 900 million, something like that.
Probably.
But in terms of the market leaders, let's say here in the UK, right, we have a very big distributor that begins with P. I'm not going to give them any too much of you, but you know who I'm talking about, right? And 80% of their supplies are imported.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we? You just spoke about collaboration, and that's the way to go for businesses, black businesses, especially here in the UK. How do we compete with gigantic industries like them, who are really, they're cornering our market? And they're doing it at a cheaper rate, cheaper prices, undercutting our businesses. How do we compete with them?
Yeah, and Nick, that's such a good question, and it has to be discussed more within our behavior change in our community. So mindset change, and it's about ethical behavior, and actually understanding that when we purchase from within the community, it's about the sustainability, it's about the jobs in the community. So we talk about musts, we use the term must. So it's important that our community make products and services, and use the products and services that they produce, and then also sell the products that they use, and then train the next generation. And there's no shortcut to our community providing jobs within the community and purchasing our own brands. And even if we do have not a great experience with each other, then let's see how we can learn. Let's say how we can improve the quality. So we need more people who are focused on hospitality, understand what quality is, can infuse that into the community. Because see, what happens is that if we have a bad experience with one member of our community, we seem to then say, well, the whole community can't supply us, or we can't do business. So at the end of the day, it's down to ourselves willing to collaborate with ourselves.
Changing the
Well, on
mindset.
that note,
And
hold
not
that
making
thought right there.
false comparisons with anyone else.
Yeah.
You hold that thought right there. And on that note, let's bring back Leanne, because I think she did discuss this in her podcast. So it'd be really interesting to bring her back on. Welcome back, Leanne.
Hi, Leanne.
I was
Yes.
listening intently.
What say you on this?
So basically, if I'm honest, before last year, so before the resurgence of Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd, buying black wasn't something that was front of my mind. And after that happened, then it became front of my mind. And then I think hair is a natural place to start, because we've been thinking about hair products, black hair products. It kind of lives and thrives off the black pound, because no other community is going to buy black hair products. So when I started it turned into an investigation in the end, to be honest. So I started off by talking to Rudi to talk about the legacy of Dyke and Dryden and the foundations that built on the black hair industry, and how that really shifted. Because I even remember seeing, when I was growing up, a real shift in the ownership in the black hair stores where I live, and I live in Reading. And I've wanted to kind of figure out why that happened and why it is the way it is now. And so PAX has a monopoly over the marketplace. But what we have seen over the last few years, and especially over the lockdown as well, is when people couldn't get to physical shops, they actually started looking at other options and other black-owned options. And really, there are loads of really amazing black-owned hair care brands that we can buy from online. And the benefits to buying black-owned is that you're getting products that are made by us for us, so they understand what our hair needs. B, you're getting quality products, because the thing about PAX is that one of the reasons why it's so successful is that it's accessible. So the products that you're getting, they are cheap, but also when you're buying cheap products, you have to think about what's going into those products. You're not always getting the best quality products. And the other thing about buying black-owned is that black-owned businesses are more likely to hire black people, they're more likely to have black-owned supply chains, and they're more likely to service the community. And so with all that in mind, for me, it's a no-brainer. And then it just really helped me change my behavior and thinking about, well, if I can buy black when it comes to my hair products, then why am I not doing this in other ways that other things that I'm buying? And I think that once we kind of start to change that behavior and that consumer thinking, then we'll start seeing a massive shift in the industry. That sort of thing will take a very, very long time. But what I found speaking to a couple other South Asian owned hair stores is that they know that if we start investing back into our own community, they don't have business. Like, it's a massive threat to them, really. But we should be empowered as consumers to buy where we want to buy it. If we want to choose to support black owned, then we should do that.
Leanne, you compiled a list that shows products that are black owned.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm wondering if we can see that list actually. We'll be happy. There we go. So we would like to see.
LTD, Chicken Nicky, Slim Brown, Michael Danny. Know
Okay.
yourself. Roll on now.
LTD. I don't know where that's
so
come
sorry.
from. But anyway,
I don't know what happened there.
anything can happen here. It's live. So do you want to talk us through a bit of this list?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that we put this together is because when we spoke to the CEO of PAX, he was trying to position PAX as a part black-owned business, which it is not. That information is publicly available. If you go on Companies House, you can see who has majority ownership of the company, and it's not black-owned. And then my producer Sylvie, she had done some research kind of post Black Lives Matter last year into some of the hair care brands that she was using. And one of the ones that she used to use was, and it's not black owned, it is Curls Unleashed. And she got in touch with them and was like, hey, I'm just doing some research. I just want to find out if you're black owned. And you should, I mean, you're hearing the podcast, but you should have seen the way they went all around the houses trying to like pull the wool over our eyes, essentially, and making something that's very simple, like something that's taboo and controversial, when really it's not. I just don't see why we can't just be informed as consumers as to whether brands are black owned or not, so we can make our own decisions. I feel like that in itself shows how valuable the black pound is, because certain brands are really kind of, they are really scared to lose the black pound because it has so much value.
Do you think, I mean, I'm looking at that list, and on the list that is black owned, there's only one product that I can identify, that I can say I recognize, and that's the Lustrous Pink. Everything else, I know. I don't know any of the others. I've been in the, maybe Design Essentials actually. I've been in here, 23 years. I stopped. And do you think it's down to our own marketing that we're not doing marketing properly?
I don't think it's not.
And
that
do you think
we're not-
it's, do you think it's that is, because these products, I can go into Asda and I can see the Cantus, I can go into Superdrug, I can find these products, but maybe
Lolly,
some of the other ones I can't find.
but
So I'm not
Lolly,
seeing, they're not visible.
Lolly, the reason is at where we are now is that, which I alluded at the beginning, the restriction of the supply and the lack of opportunity in the marketplace. The market is rigged in a sense, in a competitive sense, against our own community. That's why it comes back to the ethical judgment, the individual mindset change of our community, to say, well, actually, built in, I might pay more, but there's a contribution to my community. There's a contribution to the training of young people. So it works out more expensive if our community is not supporting itself and not supporting its entrepreneurs and not giving opportunities for young people. That's the mindset shift that is needed, because it's not difficult to dump products and keep them at a low price in order to create a barrier so that no one else can ever open on that street.
Yeah,
I'm going to throw a fly in the ointment here then. Okay, yourself, you've been very successful over the years. You're very well noted. Some of the other people that have been on there. What's stopping some of the top people that have got the skills, that have the experience, clubbing together and starting off their own together? Like a new Dyke and Dryden. What's stopping it, everybody?
There's absolutely nothing stopping collaboration within the community. But and again, it's for this new generation, those coming up now, to understand that much of what they may be thinking is new has been done before, and in the long run, their own sustainability is going to be supporting their community, and the community to support them.
But surely, in that sense, with the experience that you guys can bring to the table, your research and your own having to leave the country to go to another country to distribute in a time where it was so hard, surely we should be able to find a way to bring that back. No?
Well, in a sense, you touched on it. The point is, which again, Leanne touched on, is that we have more brands now that have been produced by the community itself in the last couple of years, particularly because of COVID, than we've had for many years. So in a sense, it's for the community to build on that and to actually understand that. Now, one of the challenges that we will have is that those who would present themselves as leading companies in this industry willing to collaborate with themselves, because in the long run, that's what they will need to do to protect their market share. And that's the lesson of learning somehow. This new generation, so I'm talking about people in their 20s and 30s, to actually understand in 5-10 years time, how are you going to maintain that business? Because markets are brutal places, because we live in a free market. You decide where you want to spend your money or not, and prices can drop. Trends will change. Yes, there's transformation now into natural hair, but in 3, 4, 5 years, who knows? It may go back to something else.
I think that really it's about what is put out there, because as you would say, there will be black businesses out there that are very successful. If you look at the Forbes rich list, you have so many black entrepreneurs on that rich list, that we wouldn't know about. People like Andy Davis, right, who's the co-CEO of 10 by 10 Fund. One of the leading businesses in the UK, and that's all done through collaboration of black businesses. So there is things being done. I think it's how we are marketed. And you've been a marketing man, Rudi. Maybe you can kind of give a little bit of insight and whatever into for the youngers on how to market their businesses, how to make it appealing, like the packs and the so on and so
how
forth.
to make their own in their neighborhood.
Yes.
So that they can compete. And I spent many years, because as I said, by profession, I'm a policy implementations consultant. So I work in business support, economic development. So I've used this knowledge in that world in terms of supporting entrepreneurship within our community through the institutions. But at the end of the day, it is going to be the mindset. If you can get a group of business owners willing to collaborate, and then, they're willing to collaborate with somebody like yourselves and Leanne, because the consumer needs to understand. Our consumers need to be informed.
Yes.
And, they need the advice, they need the support and understanding. I mean, that's one thing, out of that sorry situation in terms of Black Lives Matter. At least it raised a consciousness within our community, as Leanne said, to actually think about, what are they doing with their spend,
And one thing I will add as well is that there are a few really great brands that are doing the work to help it make it easier for us to find these brands. So you've got Yummy UK, you've got Black Pound Day, and the concept of shopping black is the same as shopping with small businesses. If you just do a little bit extra research, you can find these brands and you can invest in them. And I've just done it's like bonus episode just highlighting 15 black-owned hair brands, most of which I hadn't even heard of before. But if you literally just do a little bit more digging, you can find so many more brands and businesses at your disposal. And all it takes is, telling a friend, sharing, just to increase that reach a little bit more.
And
I guess what it is people have been spoilt. People have been spoilt. We just want what we want when we want it.
Convenience,
No, you're right.
We've got literally 3 minutes before we have to wrap up this week, and it's been fantastic. I mean, Rudi and Leanne, if you don't mind, if you wouldn't mind hanging on for our YouTubers, if they have any questions, or if you can put any links to your work, what you're doing, where people can get some information as to what you're doing, that would be fantastic. We've got to thank you for joining us this week on our last one before we close for the season.
Indeed, yeah.
It's been fantastic.
Right.
It really has.
So, Nick, your point, alternative distribution system. That's what your generation has to think about. Alternative distribution system. That's why these pop-up shops are important. Groups getting together, taking over places at a weekend, entrepreneurs sharing what we say, pool resources and share revenue. So get a place, 20 of you, share the cost of renting it, market it, promote it within the community, bring the community, provide a good service, a fair service, and get the consumer back and give young people a chance. Absolutely. Give young people jobs,
with more people, as I said, Rudi, with more people like yourself and Derek and people who've been there at the start, more people like Leanne who are putting it out there on social media where the young people are engaging. I think that we're on the right track, and we just have to keep believing in ourselves.
Exactly.
So thank you very much for your presence this evening. It's been absolutely enlightening speaking to you both, and encouraging as well. Thank you very much, and keep on keeping on with what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please do put your details in the YouTube as well. Nick.
Wow. Is an hour gone already, Lolly?
It has.
It has flown by.
And there we go. It's been repeated on Channel 7 and Sky 182 every Saturday at 10:30 p.m. Also, do subscribe, follow, share, because that helps us get things going as well. And we
Indeed.
will be back sometime in January. So make sure you are following so
January.
you know when we are back.
Absolutely. We're out the door, guys. It's been really great. We can't even have a little rap with you this evening. But Lolly, I'm going to miss you over the next couple of months. So keep in touch. I'll get withdrawal symptoms otherwise. So have a nice
we'll have
break.
a wrap after the show.
Yeah, okay.
We'll
Have
go
a
to
nice
the green.
break.
I'll
We'll
see you in the green
soon.
room.
Lovely. All right. Cheers, guys. Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
gents. Bye.